Okay guys, welcome back to the digital portrait drawing class. We are now in session 15, and this session is more of a bonus session because it is about photo painting, which is really a lot of fun, but it's not technically drawing, so it doesn't really fit in with a portrait drawing class, but it is such a fun technique, and it's also a pretty common one, and I would be remiss if I didn't at least introduce you to it. Alright guys, before we begin, there's a couple of short setup steps that we need to go through first. First of all, you need to make sure that you are using Photoshop CS5 or above, because with CS5, Adobe introduced us to this amazing new mixer brush tool that's found underneath the brush tool set. It's all the way at the bottom. Now this mixer brush is as fun as it is mysterious. It's as powerful as it is confusing because it comes with all sorts of different options at the top to set, and they all do something different, except two of them seem to do the same thing, but not really. Okay, instead of trying to noodle through that, because I could spend almost an entire course just teaching exactly what the mixer brush does, I've included some presets for you. So, how do you get them? Well, you pull down on the preset one. There's already a bunch of them that come with it, and you're welcome to go ahead and use those. Those will work out too. But what I'd like you to do is go to this little gear icon and load tool presets. And then with the course files, there's a painting tool presets, a TPL file. Just grab that and load it, and that will put the presets in that we're going to be using in this lesson. Next, we need a starter image. We're actually not beginning with our canvas. We're starting with a photo. This is from Stock Free Images, and it is a portrait by Dolnichow, and it's also available in the course files that comes along with this video. So let's go ahead and open this up. Now this technique is known as photo painting because we are using a brush to paint, but it's directly on a photo. So it's not the same as the traditional style of painting that you may be expecting. It is something entirely different. It is using the photo and using it to process it creatively, very similar to what the smudge brush does, but a much more sophisticated manner. And through that, create a very believable painted image. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is make a copy of that photo layer. Alright, and this one we're just going to call the base. And what we need to do is remove a lot of the details of this photo. Not the important details like eyes. I'm talking about smaller details that become distracting and don't really work with the photo painting process, like the small hairs, the pores in her skin, and other very, very minor details. And to do that, we will use the Smart Blur filter. We'll set the quality to high. Pull the radius up a little bit. Now for each image it's going to be a little bit different. What you want to make sure is that the base lines are all still there, but the textures of the surfaces are blurred out. Okay, so now we will add a new layer for our basic brushwork, and let's grab that mixer brush. Now in our tool presets, we've got a whole bunch of them here because we added some and they already came with several. What I'm going to ask you to look for is the basic paint brush. Now this is one that I added. If you'd like, you could start with the all-purpose painter brush that ships with the program and see what it does. And if you like the way that that works, if you actually have some experience with painting, you will probably like the way this works because it does pick up the paint and sort of carry it around with you, so the paint itself is on the brush, which creates some unique effects, but it becomes somewhat difficult to control. So what I'm suggesting is use my basic paintbrush preset. Make sure this sample all layers is engaged here, and we're using this basic brush layer because what that will do is keep the brush strokes on that layer and not actually distort the base layer. It just paints over it, but still picks up those pixels. Okay, so with this brush, we go in and we just begin painting along the image. Now, it doesn't look like it's doing anything there because I'm just in her clear areas of her forehead. But as we get along to the eyebrows, you can see that it's essentially doing a very similar thing to what the smudge tool does in creating brush strokes from the pixels that are on the portrait. Now, in this stage, our goal is to sort of outline all the contours and obliterate the details. Now, not obliterate as in destroy like this. The goal is to follow along the lines of the image so that you're creating what appears to be brush strokes of the pixels and not just blurred, smudged areas. The idea is to go along and do this not for every single pixel in the image, but really for all the lines in it that you can tell it's a photograph already. You just want to trace over those. As you come along the edges, go with the edges. Don't go against them because it creates that look. Go with them so it looks as if it was a paintbrush that created those and not a camera. Okay, now that I have her face completely painted in that way, I'll add yet another layer for her hair. And I'm right now going to use the same brush, just increase it in size a little bit, and then go through and do the exact same thing with her hair. Okay, so that's really already looking very painterly, but let's soften it up a little bit because some of these brush strokes are looking a little harsh. You may like that, but we can still soften it. So I'm going to add a blend layer. For my tool presets, I will then find my blend brush. And using this blend brush, increase the size a little bit, you can go in and just soften some of those large colored areas. I really should have my brush preview up so you can see this. So this blend brush really does a great job of softening those color changes, and so there's a better gradation of those tones. Okay, so now let's add some details to her hair. And of course, there's a hair brush. And the point of this one is to add some of those smaller, wispy hair lines to create a more realistic appearance to her hair. Okay, now speaking of details, I need to bring back some of those details that we obscured earlier. So let's add a details layer, and then grab a detail brush. And then I'm going to hide all the layers except the base layer. All right, make sure that we're on that details layer and go in and simply paint over the details that I want to keep. And what this is going to do is pull those details onto this layer that then floats on top of those other painting layers. Now you'll want to do this for the eyes and for the highlights in the lips and any other small details that you really want to retain in the painting. And so then, once you zoom back out, you turn on the other layers that we've previously hidden, and we end up with a pretty convincing painted portrait. Now I do want to just add a quick hue saturation adjustment layer here because I do find the whole thing is looking a little cool. So that's, I mean, as in a little bluish. So I want to add a little warmth to it there. That works well. All right, and there we go. A photo painting technique that's quick and it's easy to do in Photoshop, where we begin with a photograph and end with a painting. And that brings the photo painting lesson to a close. That's it for the photo painting, guys. I hope you really enjoyed that. That's a classic Photoshop technique that doesn't really involve drawing, but I think it would be wrong to leave it out of a portrait course because you do see it so often with Photoshop. And it's a legitimate technique, it's a time saver, and the results are pretty good at it. So I hope it's something you can use. I hope it's something you enjoy.